to show you how to make this two-dimensional Sally out of fondant. To start, I measured my cake and then I printed this out the size I wanted it to be. I rolled my fondant out really thin. That's marshmallow fondant and it does have Tylo's powder in it to help it set a little harder. And then I'm going to start my trace, cut, and smooth method on here. So I'm looking past the hair and figuring out where the head goes. And I'm making sure, I'm taking my Dresden tool and making sure I'm getting all of the inner detail as well, tracing down to the neck. And once I have everything traced, I'm going to take my Dresden tool and just deepen these lines on here. So I do have the picture close for reference so I can look at it, and I'm just making sure that I deepen everything. And then I'm taking my X-Acto knife and I'm cutting out the head, neck, and chest. And anytime I cut anything out of fondant, I'm going to take my fingers and my tools and just smooth those jagged edges to make it look nice and pretty. And I'm just going to keep repeating that process. So now I have white fondant. I'm tracing the white part of the eyes onto the white fondant and then taking my X-Acto knife, cutting it out and smoothing my cuts. And doing the same thing for the black part. So the black part of the eye is just a little thicker, and I'm also tracing these little eyelashes on here. They're really thin on her, so I'm trying to make them a little thicker so they don't break when I cut this piece out. So I use the picture as a guide. I do modify some of the decorations on the picture a little bit just so it can make it easier to handle as I'm cutting everything out of fondant so things don't break. So I'm cutting this entire piece out, and then again I want to smooth it. You have to be really careful when you remove this. Do you see how the fondant's still sticking? So you got to make sure the fondant is released so you don't break the pieces. And then I'm just taking my tools and smoothing my cuts and doing the same thing for the hair. So the hair is kind of cut off a little bit on the sides and the top. So again, I have to look past the picture and try to figure out what that looks like. And then I'm tracing the inner part of the bangs, like where it's going around the face, and tracing on the inside of the neck and down onto the chest. And then I'm going to cut it out. So I'm going to put the hair around that face that I cut out. This will make sense as I go through it, but you see I'm cutting out the head and the neck, and this will fit around that blue piece just like that. And I have the top part on top of the blue and the rest of it kind of contours to the shape. And I'm doing the same thing for the lips. Trace them on the fondant, cut it out, smooth my cuts. And these little patches on here, do you see how small these little pieces are? So I just rolled out a little bit of those different colors, and again tracing it on here, cutting it out, smoothing my cuts. Now I have an edible marker and I have the picture close for reference again, and I'm just adding these little lines and stitches on here. Now I put it on a piece of black fondant because I want a black background on here. So do you see how I'm lifting up the piece and getting a little bit of water underneath, and then I'll put it back down. Make sure you don't get too much water underneath it. You do not want the water seeping out the sides. So I'm just trying to put this back down onto the fondant so it looks like the picture. Then I'm going to put the other pieces on here. I started putting those eyes on there and realized I need to draw the hair in first. So again, I'm sorry I keep saying this, but I do have the picture close for reference, and I'm just taking my black edible marker and adding all of these lines on here, and then I can just add all of these other pieces to her face. And again, just making it look like the picture. I forgot to add these little lines, so I wanted to add them. I'm placing down all of these pieces to make it look like the picture. And then most important part is you want to color it in. Do you see how she shaded in blue in the picture? So I have the picture close so I can keep looking at it. And I'm just taking a paintbrush with a tiny head on it, dipping it in some petal dust, and just trying to shade this in here. Low and slow is the name of the game when you are shading this in, because you can't take the color off, but you can always add it on. And then I just wanted to edge the hair with a little bit of black just to make it stand out a little bit more and continue to put a little makeup on her, if you will. And then I just want to add the detail to the patchwork in her little dress here. So I'm just adding swirls and little lines and some polka dots. And then I want to cut an even black border out around the entire thing. I just think these pieces look a lot nicer when they have a little border around them. And taking my fingers and smoothing my cuts. And here is the two-dimensional Sally. How adorable is she? I have made this quite a few times on my Nightmare Before Christmas cakes. And I do have a video where I go into detail on how to make this one. And that is linked in my bio.